All right, guys. So we got episode 38 or 39. I'm not even quite sure at this point, but we got a special guest here, Matt Kelly, 2019 New York State champion, 2018, I think, third in the state. Am I right on that, Matt?
2019.
2019 third,
Yeah.
2020 champ. Yep. So why did I say 2018?
Yeah.
Oh, geez Louise. Two-time All-State wrestler, two-time Catholic State champ, was all-section in Section 1 before he transferred to Iona Prep. He was a youth state finalist. Did you win that year?
Nah, I lost twice.
Youth state finalist twice. Something about Matt, and we'll get into it as we go, but Matt has been, being that technically he's still a club guy because he's a college guy, but he's still a club guy, is one of the longest running Iowa style / Empire guys out there. I would put Matt Kelly in that category. Chris Perry's up there, been there for a while. PJ has been there for a while. If we talk about college guys, Adam and some other guys have been there for years, but they're kind of on their last legs of college wrestling. When it's all said and done, Matt will be one of the longest tenured guys for sure. So Matt Kelly. So Matt, now we normally start these, bud. How did you get into wrestling? How did that whole thing start?
I started when I was in fourth grade. I was living in Greenwich, Connecticut,
Okay.
and so I went over to a Stanford practice, Stanford, Connecticut, with my dad, and initially it was for football. So then I got into wrestling after that. Get better at football.
Now, real quick, I think I might be remembering this correctly, but I could be a little wrong, so correct me if I'm wrong. There was a connection with our good friend KD early, right? Didn't you do something like animals or something early on?
Yeah,
Do some like
yeah.
MMA
My
or something?
my dad, he like filmed like a commercial in animals for like his brand that he was doing, and Khalid was there. So I was like in fifth grade and I met him, and then I was good friends with the kid that trained at animals when he lived in New York, and Khalid knew him. So I was pretty tight with him.
Just out of my own curiosity, do you remember his name? The other kid, the friend? Did he come?
Yeah, Justin Rivas. He used to go to the club.
If I seen him, am I right? Because I remember you having like a buddy, but now that
Yeah.
I'm trying to picture his face. But
Mhm.
Coach D, do you remember when you first met this guy here, Matt Kelly?
Matt was he was a real energetic young seventh grader on the Somers team. And I think he was when we had a pretty good team at the time. I think Matt was the only one that won. We went down there and we wrestled Somers and we pounded Somers. And Matt was like a seventh grader and he won.
I think I remember
Everybody
that.
else lost.
I think
He
I
was the
remember
best
that.
kid. He was the best kid on the Somers team in seventh
I thought
grade.
we had like Joe
Was Real
Sacco.
Buto around? I don't know if Real Buto was around then.
No, he was gone.
I
That's
mean,
when we had like
Dylan?
Sasso and Nadler and like a young Jacob Ferrer, young Aaron
Yeah.
Walker, Matt Schreiber. So we were pretty tough, and they were.
I think you wrestled Nadler a couple times.
I don't think so.
Nadler was a little bigger.
A little bigger, yeah.
Yeah.
Until Matt got bigger, but then
Who
Nadler,
did you wrestle from Greeley?
I don't think anybody
Nick
good.
Phillips?
He wrestled Aaron before, I think, but other than Aaron, he didn't wrestle
Yeah.
anybody good. I don't think.
Yeah. I wrestled Aaron a lot at the club.
Yeah, I mean, you guys. I think we'll get into that later, but I think Aaron has. There's a lot of people I think that and Matt being the most important person in his own success, but I think Aaron definitely was a guy in there because he was one of your go-to.
Oh yeah,
partners
definitely,
for a
definitely
while
Aaron.
and definitely pushed you. But so Matt, talk a little bit about your youth experience because I remember it, but just for the interview purposes, it's good for other people to hear it from you.
Yeah, so I started going to youth at Empire in fifth grade. Back then it was Iowa style, so we're on the other side, on the sports side, and I just remember loving it. Seeing all the high school kids going. Then I'd go for the youth. So I was too big for the youth, I remember, and then I had to go to the high school class, like the club class. I don't know if you remember that, but wrestling with all the high school guys, that was really cool. So that kept me in it.
If I remember correctly, again, I feel like I'm very spacey lately. There's so much on my mind that I'm forgetting things, which is not good. But I remember, I think it was you, Aaron, and another kid from Fox Lane that was like always a group of three.
Yeah,
You guys were
Robbie
coming
Rossi.
up. What was his name?
Robbie Rossi. And Tom
Yes.
Mahoney was there too, the Mayapack kid.
Yes, that was the group.
He was always
He used
there.
to get beat up by you guys. He was the.
Yeah, they would beat me up always.
I remember that because, Coach,
Yeah.
you know how now with coronavirus, we're not doing that right now. We're kind of just doing one practice, but that's kind of split. And, we don't want to do the temperature checks as many times. So we're doing it one time so we know how many people are coming in the room. But we used to do the 5 and 7 o'clock.
Yeah.
That was like a staple of the 7 o'clock for a little while with those guys, with like Aaron and that guy. And it's so crazy because, like, as we will get into this interview, Matt being a state champion and being a very dominant state champion, it's so funny to see. Not funny, it's awesome, and hard work pays off, right? But like, it's so crazy to think about him as like that man that ran through a state tournament compared to that little pudgy guy that was coming at the 7 o'clock practice.
Funny kid though. He was
Funny,
fun.
always. Oh, all the way
He was
through.
a clown. He was like he'd just goof around, right, man?
Always.
Yeah.
He always had great energy and always very
Yeah.
respectful to every coach, and everybody rooted for Matt.
Yeah, I love to wrestle.
Matt was a Section 1 guy, really. I mean, he was a Somers guy, but he was a Section 1 guy.
Yeah.
And then you transferred over to Iona Prep, right?
Yeah.
I feel like a lot of those guys, though, Coach, and correct me if I'm wrong, but a lot of those Empire guys, even the Connecticut guys, like, to me, like a guy like RJ felt Section 1-ish to me, even though he had nothing to do with Section 1, but he was part of our clique. You know what I mean? So when I would see him at like Easterns, it would be like a local guy, even though he wasn't a local guy, And I think Matt was basically the king of that because he really was a local guy at Iona. He still got to go to the Westchester County Championships and all of that stuff.
Right.
So as we could see with his 2 packets behind him. So we got to see him in that. But I remember like yesterday, I think it was 5th grade, Matt, when you made the state finals the first time in youth.
Yeah.
And I think I just kind of barely knew you, and it was you and your dad were there, and your dad was a great guy, and it was a great experience. And I'm like, this kid's a good kid. Like, there's something about this kid. I like this kid. And like, I think at the time, you hear Lucas crying. I think it might be bedtime. But you heard, Luca, you're messing up Matt's interview. Get tough. God darn it, kids today.
What's going on with that
do with these 10 months? When I was 10 months, I was pushing boulders in the street. But anyway, yeah, exactly. So, but it's up to Matt if he wants to bring up his relationship with his dad. But I remember that day and being like, his dad was a very, very nice guy. So just because, and as a coach, Coach DeBellis, when you meet a parent that's nice and easy to talk to, you kind of want to coach their kid a little bit harder. You know what I mean? You have that like, you're like, all right, this guy's a good guy. Let me get in there. And I remember Matt being a very good kid. Like, he was young, but he was a nice kid. I'm like, man, I want this kid to win. Like, he was a goofball. He was chubby. I'm like, he might not win, but like, I want him to win. But it's so funny because I could picture him there, and to senior year at States, it's like the transformation is insane. I guess, Matt, talk about any of that before we move on, like the youth, your transformation, your dad, whatever you want to talk about. But that whole 5th grade Matt Kelly is something different from 12th grade Matt Kelly.
Yeah, 5th grade was like a really important year for me, honestly. That was when I was first at Iowa style with you guys, and like having you were coaching me, and then the other Greeley coach, he was at the club
Danny
too.
Hall.
I forgot his name.
Danny Hall.
Well, yeah, so he was there too, and I remember having a really good connection with you guys, even though it was my first year. And I think that had an influence on me doing like well at the tournament, and yeah, it was just a really great experience to start it off.
Yeah, when do you think, Matt, we got seriouser with you? Because I know, and for a disclaimer for the people listening, we pushed Matt pretty hard. I mean, I'm not going to say we as in everybody, like Coach Sabellis was a Greeley guy, Greeley coach, but, Greeley and Empire have that relationship, so Coach has a lot of relationships with the Empire guys, but, Coach wasn't the one that was, like, raining on Matt's parade. I might have been that guy sometimes, and John and Alex Malikian, I know, pushed him pretty hard.
Yeah.
When did that shift happen where you were, like, the fun – I don't want to use the word cute kid, but you were kind of a cute kid. You're like a little chubby guy that was happy all the time. We started to say, all right, we're laying the hammer down on this guy now. Do you remember that transition?
I think like 8th grade when I first went to varsity for Somers, and I was starting to do better. I went like 16-10 on varsity that year. Like, I was nothing special, but you were. Even in 7th grade, you were hard on me. I was like in the club practice, if I was messing around, I'd have to do push-ups or something, or, you guys had high expectations of me. So I think definitely 8th grade was that major transition though. And then going into my junior year when I put on a lot of weight, pretty good weight at 95. So then John started paying more attention to me, and, it took off from there.
Yeah, definitely was a big jump. Coach Sabellis, like you said, you remember him as a 7th grader beating one of our guys, but do you remember him as like a middle schooler on varsity other than that? Like, just being there, wrestling tough and all that stuff?
Yeah, I just always remember Matt as being the guy that's, he was the leader of the team at a very young age, and he kind of held court, but he also uh, transcended the teams. Like, everybody knew Matt from Greeley. So, like, when we went to Somers, it would be like, Matt would be on our sideline almost a little bit, hanging out
Yeah.
with our guys and having a good time. But he was always tough, and I do remember the transition when he got a little bit more serious and those matches started to mean a hell of a lot to him. And but every time he had a tough loss, he always worked hard to get back to where he needed to be, and he ran that state tournament. It was an amazing run and dominated the finals.
I mean,
It had to be tough because AJ wrestled right before you, right?
pretty much.
Yeah.
But we'll jump. I don't want to go to state finals yet, but like Coach Sabella said, that was an exceptional run. Because Matt has Coach Sabella, so many layers of how he kind of got to that position. I remember Matt, in a way, to me, was similar to Adam in a way. He was similar to Adam in a way where he like he was a young guy with the old guys all the time.
Yeah, he was like the little brother.
Adam was the same, right? And I think because of that, Adam was my cousin, so he got it worse from me than Matt did. But Matt still got it pretty bad for me because I considered Matt pretty much family at that point because he was there for that long, and he was one of the guys, right? So I looked at him differently than I would look at a regular 7th or 8th grader that was in the club. Like Matt said, I expected more out of him, so I pushed him. But there was days where like he would crack me up, and we would have fun. And like one story I remember is we were at the geez Louise. What was
Catamount?
that?
Are you about to say Catamount?
Catamount. So Catamount duels, and we were there. And Matt was wrestling tough, as usual. But I think he was going against like a New England champ or something tough. So I was like, Matt, when you go out there, and he's an 8th grader or 7th grader, he was young. I said, Matt, when you go out there, challenge this kid to a rap battle. He's like, what? I'm like, challenge him to a rap battle. So they shook hands, and Matt challenged him to a rap battle in the middle of the match. And I'm like, what is happening right now? He's really doing this. And he started rapping or something. I don't know. Then the whole car ride back, he wouldn't stop talking. So I told him he had to sit in the car for the whole car ride. And he did it too for half the car ride. So
every time I stopped, he'd yell at me though. So I had to.
Listen, this podcast might go off the rails. I might be in jail after this one, so we might have to be careful what we bring up and what we don't bring up. But
you'll be fine.
But it seems like it worked out pretty good for him. So whatever we did, it worked. But maybe Matt, talk a little bit about younger years, not older years yet, but like having fun. Maybe the struggle of hanging with the older kids because you did get pushed hard, and maybe like Malikian's like a big brother too. Malikian loved you, and he still does. I'm sure. Yeah. He meant all well by it. But it probably was hard with that pressure. So you got that side of it. But then you got the opposite side of it as you're the young guy hanging out with all the cool older kids, and that must have been fun, So there's two sides of it. So maybe talk about maybe some stories from that or something that stands out to you.
Yeah, so I mean, like I would just hang out with the older guys because I thought it was cool. Like 7th grade, going on all the trips, John Smith Camp, NC State, and I just had fun. Like 13-year-old hanging out with like high school kids. But, Alex Malikian, he goes to Binghamton now, too, with me. He would always push me to wrestle harder, and I would do privates with him, and he'd always be helping me out. And, like, he would look out for me at NC State camps as I was younger than everyone, and I was rooming with him. So, it was fun, but I would wrestle these guys, and they'd beat me up. So, I'd wrestle like, you remember like Satoshi Abe?
Yeah, of course.
Yeah, so like Satoshi'd be beating me up, Adam, Alex Malikian, all the older guys you can name, Grant. So, I was getting better, and it was honestly fun. Even the hard parts were fun. I love the process of it.
Yeah, that's a good answer. I actually remember vaguely a story too. You might have been an 8th or 9th grader. And you were being a clown in practice, and it was like a push-up thing. I was like, go do push-ups. I'm not doing it. And I might have said a high number, but Malikian.
You said 10,000.
How many did you do?
1,000.
Oh, we were playing at my wrestling academy on Route 100 in Somers. But I think Malikian like took it upon himself to make you like put a board on your back or something.
Yeah, he made me put a board.
That wasn't me.
I know that was
Okay.
messed up.
All right. I just want to clear the air. Again, not abusing children. That was
That
not
was
Alden.
messed up.
That was Alex. That was Alex, not me. But you know what's crazy is Matt. Correct me if I'm wrong on this one as well. But I think you had a trajectory where you could have been good. But I don't think you were naturally the most athletic guy, not the most gifted wrestler in the world, which is fine. There's plenty of kids that are like that, and if there's a will, there's a way. Obviously, as you showed. But I kind of believe that if it wasn't for you just being part of that pack as a young guy, like wanting to hang out with the older guys and being around the Malikans of the world, that maybe you wouldn't quite be where you are right now. I'm sure there was days when it was really hard, but I feel like it paid off, and it's not maybe it's not done paying off. Maybe I'm just saying that because I don't want to think about all the hard workouts you went through and be like, oh my God, like we did that for nothing. I would like to think that was for something. But what do you think about that? You think it paid off for you?
Yeah, I mean, like, I'm just really thankful that all the older guys would, beat up on me and help me out. It wasn't like they're just like beating the crap out of me. They'd help me out with technique after, show me what I was doing wrong. So I was always learning something out of everything we are doing. So I was just grateful that I was like a young kid, like getting what I was able to get. Like not a lot of kids were able to wrestle with like state finalists when they're like eighth graders. So it's just a great experience.
Yeah, I mean, Coach, what would you say about that at a young age? Fifth grade, and Matt, correct me again if I'm wrong. I keep saying that, but like I said, my brain is mush. Fifth or sixth grade, I feel like it depends on who the kid is, right? Like when PJ was a fifth or sixth grader, and if you guys are watching this tomorrow or the next day, whenever I put this out, PJ just making the finals of Super 32 was ultra, impressive as an eighth grader, extremely impressive. But as a fifth grader, he worked really, 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 really hard. But he started off as a first grader being semi-serious, and then by fifth grade it was very hard.
Mm-hmm.
Matt kind of started by a fifth grader, and by eighth grader was really hard. And to me, that's kind of the perfect storm, right? I feel like fifth grade is kind of like, all right, go to practice, figure it out. Sixth grade, we're still kind of figuring it out. Seventh grade, we can lay the hammer on you a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
Coach Sabellis, when do you think is maybe too early to start pushing some of these kids? Do you think there's like a perfect age, or what's your opinion on that? I'm just curious, Coach.
I would say that you'd have to feel out the kid a little bit and see where they're at. Like in the club at Greeley, a lot of those kids are just having fun, and we play a lot of games and stuff like that. But if you wanted to get more serious, you'd go to Empire and you would train, and then you meet up with different people that have different expectations, and the pressure's got to come from within. You got to want it. If you don't want it, it's going to be impossible.
Well, I think PJ, and Matt.
PJ handles it really well too.
That's what I was gonna say. I think there's differences, right? Matt handled it really well too, but it was a little later in his life. Like PJ's dad, I think obviously he's a great dad. He pushed Timmy and PJ pretty hard in the beginning, but Timmy wasn't feeling it as much as PJ, and PJ embraced it, and it just seemed like it worked, and he ended up being a superstar. Now I believe if Timmy continues to wrestle, he could be a section champ, he could be a state champ, he could be all those things. Which is normal and really good and exceptional probably for most families. It just so happens that PJ is a phenomenon. I think PJ was just different. I think Pete felt it, knew he was different, and was able to kind of like, twist those gears a little bit because he is special, right? And you can be special in other things. It doesn't only have to be wrestling, but PJ happens to be special in wrestling, and a lot of times his hard shows, and that's some good stuff outside of wrestling. But I feel like Matt, when he decided to, that's why I'm using PJ as an example, because he decided at a young age, I want to do this really, really for real. Like, I want to be serious. When Matt made that decision, his trajectory went skyrocketing, and I think 7th, 8th grade is when that kind of really happened. And I really believe that a guy like Malikian was instrumental in that because he was seeing the success of his mentor in a way. What do you think about that, Matt?
Yeah, I thought, seeing Malikian in the state finals that year, I was in 8th grade, and he was working with me a lot. And he'd never, like, even made it to states before that. So, that was just, like, really exciting for me. And after that, I was like, all right, time to do everything I can to get to states. So freshman year and sophomore year, I was training really hard at Somers. And then that just led to the move to Iona. Because, I remember Malikian went to Kennedy with John to further better his wrestling. So, I thought that'd be the best move for me.
Yeah, I would agree. And it obviously worked out. And I think, John has a lot to do with that, but I also think, you you ever hear the saying, and DeBellis, tell me if I'm sure you've heard this, but it's like, it's about the crowd you hang out with, right? And I feel like, and not to put Matt's business on the street because Matt's a great kid, but there's probably people in Somers that maybe he would hang out with that probably weren't the best influences in the world.
Yeah.
But you go to a place like Iona, and AJ could probably do a little bit better academically, but he does work hard. I think he's doing pretty good at NC State right now, and he's a hardworking, good kid, right? And I think for Matt, who was always a good kid as well, but to have somebody that has similar goals as him, with him, helped keep him in the right mindset, pushing for the right type of goals. What would you say about that, Matt? Like having somebody near you that's kind of like pushing in the same direction as you.
That's actually huge for me, Anthony. Like I think having AJ on my team that year like really pushed me to do better because I was sophomore year, I was 195. I just went up there. I took third in the section, and I had Jordan Anderson and Johnny in front of me. So, I went to Iona, and then having AJ pushing me at practice every day, even though he was lighter, he was, beating me up, showing me technique, giving me all the advice I needed to do better. And then, when the season came to be, having someone like that with me, it really helped me out, make the adjustments to wrestle these really good guys and place at the state tournament.
I agree. And I think AJ and Coach, and this is where I want Coach DeBellis to jump in on this because I love that he's on your interview, Matt, because there is some Empire guys that will interview that Coach will be asking more questions as an outsider, because Camacho was somebody that he didn't know as well. RJ's going to be somebody he didn't know as well. But you and AJ, he knew pretty well because you guys had a lot of grilly practice and stuff like that.
Yeah.
And Coach DeBellis, I have to say, AJ, great kid. Matt Kelly, great kid. And I think they both kept each other kind of in the right mind space, if that makes sense. Would you agree with that, Coach DeBellis?
Yeah, I think that AJ is a student of the game, and I think Matt is too. Like, these guys think about what they're doing. They'll reflect after practice. Oh, how did we do this? How did we get in this situation? So that was great for our guys to see those guys come into our room every week or getting closer to the big tournaments. Matt would be there. AJ would be there. And I think it was more beneficial for us as a team to have those guys in our room than for them to be in our room. Really.
Well, yeah, I agree with that. And it frustrates me sometimes because a guy like Matt will put his trust in me, right? A guy like AJ will put his trust in me. And then sometimes it's kind of hard to get all of our guys to fully trust. But that might not be a trusting per se.
I think it's more
wrestling per se.
It's more of the amount of work that goes into winning. And I think these guys are willing to put that time in no matter what. They'll go to school. They'll do two-a-days.
But why, right? Because you got to think about it like that. I understand what you're saying. But Matt,
because they have something to prove. They have something to prove to themselves.
But Matt, I want you to jump in on this because it's actually a very interesting caveat. You like that? Matt, like I said, Matt, we were hard on Matt. We pushed Matt. There was workouts where Matt, I'm sure, did not enjoy himself.
Yeah, but there's workouts I've just broken, yeah.
But why did you keep coming back? Because, before you answer that question, think about that question for a second. But then I transitioned that to my Greeley guys. And, you have Coach DeBellis, who is one of my mentors, right, in the room. And then you have me, who I like to think is a good wrestling coach. And I've been doing this for a while, and I've been around a lot of good guys. You got Khalid, who's, all over the place now and making a name for himself. And you have Alex De La Cruz, who's a known, he's a national champ. The kid could wrestle, obviously. They have that at their fingertips. And some of the guys are taking advantage of it, and some guys don't. Jacob Ferreira took advantage of it. Aaron Walk took advantage of it. Yeah. Matt Schreiber took advantage of it. Oliver Holt, a kid that you don't know as well, Matt Kelly, but he didn't win a match as a sophomore, won 20 as a junior. First year wrestler sophomore, won 20 as a junior. After going 0-30, won 20 the next year. I think he took advantage of it. But my thing is, why go through a sport that is so difficult, like wrestling, and not fully commit when you have the world? I don't want to say we're the world, but you have a nice coaching staff there at your fingertips. And I wanted to ask you that question, Matt, because you're a guy that, you were pushed to the limit a lot, but you kept coming back. What was your why? Why did you do that? What was your mindset through all that?
I mean, there's a lot of personal reasons for that, just wanting to prove to myself that I was capable of a lot of stuff. Because, being younger, I was always picked on, made fun of. Not a lot of people know this, but third grade, I was playing football and people would call me Fat Matt and stuff. And, so I always think of stuff like that when I'm working out, being a little kid and people going back to me, teasing me. And, you know, it's that it's also just like, you know, my love for the sport. You know, I love going in and I love getting better. So I love like being coached. I love the guys I'm hanging out with. So there's a lot of things on the team I love. You know, I have great coaches that understand me and are able to help me. So, you know, coming back and going through the grind every day, like it wasn't much of a hassle for me. It was something I wanted to do. So if that's not something you don't, if you don't want to drag yourself out of bed to go on a 6 a.m. run and then go to 2 practices and then go for a lift, you know, you don't have to, but those are the things you have to do to be like a state champ or a national champ, you know?
Well, Matt, it's interesting that you were picked on as a kid, and then, in my experience with you, I've never seen you ever mistreat anybody. I've never seen you pick on any younger kid. So I
Yeah.
mean,
I'm nice to the younger kids. Yeah.
well, it's pretty important. I think that you went through that, but you didn't do it to other kids, but you were actually a champion for
Yeah.
them.
I really
I
like
mean,
that.
like, you don't want to treat others how you don't want to be treated, you know? It's
Yeah.
there's no point to it too, just making other people feel bad.
I think that lends a hand too to what I talked about. I think in Camacho's interview, maybe that a lot of our club kids that have been successful are really good kids. You know, and Matt, like you said, Matt was always. If I ever asked Matt at practice, and I'm sure he remembers this happening before, to go help a younger kid or go help this kid over there with this, he never gave me a problem. You know, and I
Yeah.
think it was a bit of that mutual respect where he knew I would help him out any way I could help him out. So why wouldn't he help the younger kid out any way he could help him out? And I think we kind of had that relationship as a club. You know, I think we still do. I hope some of our younger club kids listen to some of these interviews because Matt was there on Thursday and I pushed them very hard on Thursday.
Yeah.
You know, we went hard and they did very well. They responded very well, but
Mm-hmm.
I feel like those guys are a little different than the AJ, Matt Kelly's, RJ's of the world. I'm not talking about just wrestling wise. You know, when I spoke in practice, Matt and AJ would fall in line, and not in a way that I'm a big, bad, tough guy. It's not that. It's the mutual respect. You know, it's that Matt knew I'm there to help him, and Matt wanted to, you know, be respectful to me because he knew I was trying to help him. Right? It wasn't like, you know, Ant's so tough, I need to listen to him. It wasn't that. It was
Yeah.
that Ant's gonna help me. He's trying. I'm gonna try too. You know, and I think some of our younger guys kind of need to understand that. Like, listen, I'll do anything to get you better. You know, Coach Chabels with the Grilly guys will do anything to get you better. John will do anything to get you better. And some of our older club guys, Matt Kelly being back in the room, he's in
Yeah.
there today, not today, whenever last time he was in there, showing moves and helping the younger kids out and just being a good leader. And I feel like, you know, Empire kind of molds that mindset. Would you say that, Matt?
Yeah, I mean, I'm always trying to help back. Like over the summer, I was volunteering and coaching the youth kids. So I always like to give back to Empire because, you know, there's so much they give to you. So you know, a big thing with the older guys, once we're done, we like to give back. You see so many kids like coming back to coach. You came back, Del Cruz came back, Khalid came back. It's a great program.
And that's really what a lot of the athletes from Empire. It's a common theme. It's about them being coaches, even during their time while they were trying to get better. They took time out for the kids below them, and I think that's something to be said about John, Empire, and you, Coach, and the kids. Really, I mean, the kids also do it.
Yeah, and before I forget, on being that we're interviewing Matt, I want to put this out there before I forget. You know, so what Greeley does, and this is not like, oh, Coach Andy's the best. It's just something we do, right? Like every Christmas, we bring the Greeley team down to my school. I teach in the South Bronx. I teach kids with special needs, and Coach Chabels was game for that day one when I brought it up. You know, or maybe Coach brought it up to me. I don't even remember how it started 6 years ago. It was, you know, 6-7 years ago at this point. And it ended up that first year we won, it was the best thing, right? Like we were lucky that we have great parents at Greeley that were willing to donate gifts. And it was good for our athletes because they got to see kids that maybe didn't have as much as they did in the South Bronx and they have special needs and all these things. And eventually I started kind of branching that out to the Empire guys. And the first guy that, or one of the first guys, because I think he came with Alex the first time, was Matt Kelly came. And he did a phenomenal job. And I could tell, like I said, a million of these interviews and podcasts and stuff like that, that our kids are all really good kids. But Matt, just the way he was handling my students and how he acted, I was like, man, Matt's a good kid. And it so happened that Matt came more than once, and about 2 or 3 years ago, I think it was 2 years ago, it was my Greeley guys, it was Dwyer, AJ, and Matt. The
Oh
Island.
yeah, my junior year, yeah.
Yeah, and just watch, our kids always do an excellent job. The Greeley kids as well, they do an excellent job. But some of them are great, but some of them are a little timid. Understandably, they don't know like what they're getting into, and they're like, I don't know if I want to play with this kid. Because sometimes kids with autism, they're not talking, and maybe they're making loud sounds, and you don't understand really what's happening if you're not in that world. But Matt never had a reservation. He kind of got right in there, grabbed the kid, was like, hey, you want to play catch? And he's playing catch with them, and he's doing these things. And I think right there that showed Matt's character. Matt, what would you say about things like that? Like, why did you take such a liking to that, and why did you feel so comfortable in that type of situation?
Well, I mean, like I always like giving back to kids with special needs. Like we were wrestling with them on the mats. You remember that, Ant?
Mm-hmm.
We're wrestling all the
Yeah, we
kids.
do that every year. It's a blast.
Yeah, I just think it's fun. You give back to these kids. They don't have as much in the city. And it's just really great to see them because like they don't have a lot and with their mental disabilities or financially, but they're so happy when you see them. Like you get to wrestle with them, they get so excited and it just like warms you up. Like it makes you feel a lot better about yourself. And so yeah, I just love to do it. Just give back to the community, give back to Empire, give back to the kids.
To me, and Coach Cabela's, tell me how you feel about this, but to me, I wanted Matt to win a state title really bad,
I was thinking the same thing.
really, really bad.
But
But
it's more important that they are good kids.
yeah, and to me, I was so proud of Matt last year when he won a state title. I'm still proud of him to this day for winning a state title and the way he did it. And we'll talk about that in a little bit. But to me, I'm almost more proud of him that he was willing to come into my school, work with those kids, and it wasn't fake, right? And I don't think our Greeley kids fake it either. They do such a good job. They really do. Like our kids are good kids, But Matt took it like a little bit higher maybe than some of the other kids, and seeing that was just a good judge of where Matt is mentally as a person, right? That doesn't mean you don't have demons in the way here and there and things get in your way, and that's life. That's gonna be life for everybody. We're gonna have to figure stuff out, and we're gonna have to get past it. But it showed where your heart was, and to me, I was like, you know what? Matt's going the right direction. There might be bumps on the road here and there, but his soul is in the right place. Like that's how you should be. That's a good person. And I feel like hopefully, and Matt, you could attest to this, but I take wrestling very seriously. Maybe I don't take the results as seriously. I think I do, but I don't take it maybe as seriously as other coaches maybe do. But I want you to give your all. I want you to get tougher. Because life's going to be tough and you got to figure it out. And Matt knows that already at a young age, but it's going to continue to happen. That's life, right?
Yeah.
But being a good kid or a good person, really, especially what's happening in 2020 and in our world right now, I think is more important than anything. Do you think wrestling, Matt, kind of helped you get some of those skills? Or, I mean, your mom's an unbelievable person too. I'm sure that had a ton to do with it. I don't want to not mention her, but like, and your dad as well. But do you think wrestling had anything to do with that?
Wrestling saved my life, like straight up. If I weren't wrestling, I'd be doing bad things or caught up with the wrong people. So definitely thankful to have wrestling, and it guides me in the right direction. Just going into the room, working hard, and it opens up connections for me. Like remember, we were going to the city working on that girls team. Me and AJ were doing that for a while, and we're like weeks at a time. We'd be going like twice a week to help these girls out in the city. Just same thing. Just like showing them technique, helping them out. Just giving back what we could. Me and AJ weren't getting nothing out of it. We're just driving 2 hours because we love to do it. We love being with Anthony, coaching, doing whatever we could.
Well, I'll push back on that a little bit because you did get something out of it. You may not got anything out of it wrestling wise, but in your mind you did, in your heart you did.
Yeah.
And being that you brought that up, like I actually forgot. Not that I forgot, but it wasn't in the forefront of my mind. But Coach DeBellis, tell me this. I want again going back to our kids being good kids. You go to most wrestling clubs in the country, right? And you take their most elite guys, which was at that time was Matt and AJ, right? They were two of the top 5 kids we had in the club at the time. It might be more of a fight to get that superstar to say, hey, I'm going to drive always to the South Bronx and help this all-girls team who has no idea how to wrestle. And I got to drive in these conditions I'm not used to. And I got to be in the neighborhood that maybe I'm not used to, this kind of neighborhood, and all that stuff. But it was never a fight. I think I said it once. I was like, Matt, AJ, you guys should come to practice one day, whatever.
Yeah.
They were
We
there.
wanted to. We wanted to go. We wanted to help you out.
Yeah.
It wasn't like you were dragging us, you know?
Yeah, which is obviously special about you guys. But Coach Abellis, you've coached wrestling for a long time. You've been around a lot of people. I wouldn't say that's normal. That's not a normal reaction.
Normal for real champions in their heart, because they find time for things like that. You know, everybody's, oh, I'm too busy. But these guys found time to round off the rest of their character to be the true champions that they are today. And I'm not talking about a champion on a mat. I mean, these guys are going to do great things in life. You know, they're going to do great things for people. They're going to always champion for people, and that's what we need. We need people that are willing to dedicate their lives to other people or to other things or to the environment or whatever it is they decide to do. It's going to be, you know, a success.
I totally agree with that. And I don't know if they noticed in the time. I'm sure Matt did, because they're kind of wise for their age. But and Matt, you could jump in here if you want. But sometimes you don't even realize the difference you're making, right? Like, you know, as a coach that's been coaching not only for 10 years, which feels like a really long time, but really on the grand scheme of things really isn't that long of a time. You know, kids will come up to me and say, oh, remember when you said that to me? Like, that really stuck out to me. I'm like, no, I don't remember when I said that. You know, you don't realize sometimes like the power of your words or the powers of your actions.
Yeah.
And I don't think, you know, I think you and AJ kind of did understand that. But like for those girls, you know, and I love those girls dearly, you know, you coming in there and showing them attention and helping them, that might have meant the world to them, right? Mm-hmm. And you don't even realize why you're doing it, but you figured anyways, I'm a good kid. This could be nothing but helpful to them. I'm gonna go, you know, and I appreciate that you did that. You know, so
yeah, it was fun.
That was a lot of fun. Hopefully, Corona doesn't crush us and we can get a season in this year.
Yeah.
You know, I'm going to actually screen record this little section here that we were talking about the girls, because there's a girl on our team, this girl, Deja. And you know Deja, Coach, right? She was the one that drowned Nikki.
Yeah.
Yeah. So she's the best, like the best. Just a good-hearted kid. Yeah. You know, just everything about her. She's great. She works hard. She loves her family. She's with her grandma and her grandpa. Like I know by the way she helps her grandma out and things like she does with her, that Deja's a good-hearted kid, and she just means well with pretty much everything she does. But because of Corona, right? She was doing great with the Zooms. I was doing these Zoom workouts with her, Matt, and I was doing all this stuff with her, and she was crushing it. Right after quarantine, meeting me for runs and doing stuff that most high school girls wouldn't be doing at that time after, you know, a lockdown. But now she got a job. She's working. She's back in remote school, all of these things. And I'm finding it really hard to get her to practice, right? And you know, super respectful. I just want her to understand that, you know, this journey is a lot bigger than wins and losses. And it's not something you should just walk away from where, you know, because it's not for me. Right. As much as I was so happy to tell people Matt Kelly won a state title, and I'd like to think I had a hand in that, and that made me feel good. I felt way better that he had that satisfaction, right? And he knew that all that work paid off, and it will continue to pay off as his life goes on after wrestling, because wrestling's done for him in 3 or 4 years, right? So you know, Matt, maybe you could give her a little message saying that it's worth it to kind of stick through this. And am I putting you on the spot right now, Matt? I'm sorry if that's
actually. I have a great quote from you, Anthony, that you told me.
It's actually from me.
Yeah. So you know, down the line, Anthony was saying this to me a little while ago. He's saying, you know, he's teaching us like shin wizard defense, all this stuff, how to finish and stuff. And you know, you're not going to have to know that 20, 30 years down the line. But it's you know, working through problems, figuring stuff out, going through adversity that's going to help you out through life. So, you know, what you're doing may not directly translate to, you know, the real world, but what you're doing is going to teach you to, you know, a harder work ethic, be tougher to deal with these hard situations when you're 40, 50 years old, you know?
It's true. It's true.
Yeah. You said that.
That's crazy that you remember that already. And that's a college guy, right? That shows how much Matt listens. But, you know, it's crazy. I learned a lot from guys like Matt too. It goes both ways. As coaches, we learn as well. You know, I learn how to coach differently or how to treat kids differently. Everybody's different. Everybody reacts different to different things I say. Where was I going with that? Jesus, my brain is fried. But you know, I almost don't want this interview to go so long because Matt, to me, Coach Sabellis is dropping some gems. And I feel like if people, if we drag it out, people aren't going to listen the whole time. But I feel like Matt, you're on point right now. You're crushing it. Let's jump into your junior year at States and not get to, all over the place. And again, and I know my brain is fried, but what I was going to say is I will always be in Matt's corner until he's done with school. And after he's done with school, I mean. And then that'll be the same for somebody like Deja, right? And that'll be the same with somebody like Sierra. And that'll be the same for somebody like Izzy. And that'll be the same for somebody like Jacob Ferreira. Once I build these relationships with you, I don't go away. I'm like a cockroach. The world could end and I'm still here. Coach Sabellis will never get rid of me. And I'm sure I'll never get rid of Coach Sabellis. He's that kind of guy. But let's jump into your junior year. That was when you really jumped on the scene. What happened? Like, how did that, you were a tough wrestler coming up. But junior year, you made a big jump. You were placing at Easterns and stuff, and I believe you placed at Easterns, my brain again. But you took third in the state. You got a big win on the backside of the state tournament there. What happened? How did that change happen?
So I transferred to Iona. Having John coaching me every day was definitely a big help. Having AJ there, like we were talking about before, I think that had a big influence on me. AJ in my corner. Not even, gonna lie to you guys. I don't think I'd be there if it weren't for him, you, and John. So that really helped me out, and just doing all the work I could every day. That it was just a slow process of pressure, putting in the work each day a little more and more, and eventually you're gonna get better.
Do you feel like with AJ on your team, when you were at Somers, you were the top dog?
Yeah, I didn't have, and no one cared about it like me. I don't mind like being the best. It wasn't that. It was just like no one like wanted to go to the off season. No one wanted to do the stuff I wanted to do. So I just felt alone in that aspect,
But then you had AJ there, and AJ was winning these big tournaments, and he had already been a state champ before he got to you. And then that year, no, he was a sophomore, I think. Did he go sophomore year? Sophomore, junior, senior at Iona?
Junior and senior, yeah. Same as
both were juniors.
Oh, okay. So he lost a big match in the Easterns, but then he won the state title.
Yeah.
Yeah, so it must have been like, hey, look, this guy's all the way up there. Look, I could rise up, and there wouldn't even be that much pressure because I'm the second guy.
Yeah, I'm a nobody. That's what I literally thought. I was like, I'm a nobody. I have nothing to lose.
And not to interrupt, not only did he do that, he won Flow Nationals that offseason going into his senior year. So he was ranked top 10 in the country going into his senior year. So like Matt said, not that Matt was a nobody, but there was a guy that was doing his thing for sure.
Sometimes it's easier that you don't have all that pressure. So it's kind of like, hey, you could shine. And then you saw AJ in the senior year. Well, you're gonna get to that, I'm sure.
Well, yeah. I mean, I want to jump on the one thing. Your third, fourth place match your junior year. Who did you beat?
So I Jordan Innocent, and he was a state finalist the year before 2018. So that was a really tough match for me going in because I remember sophomore year I lost to him by a major decision. So he was a lot better than me then dominated the match on his feet on the ground. So. Eastern States that year, closer match. It was 6-5. I knew I could beat him, so I made all the adjustments I could to go into the state tournament. So when I saw him for third in the bracket, I was like, this is my chance to beat him. I can't go 0-3 to this kid before he leaves, so I got to get one win in. So, I did everything I could, made the adjustments, did my top work, and turned him, beat him 6-0.
Yeah, you were always tough on top. That's for
I think
sure.
that's mental, though, Coach. Think about that. He was 0-2 against this guy. This guy's a returning state runner-up, and he gets
who was it?
Innocent.
Oh,
he was really tough,
tough. And he gets dropped into the wrestlebacks, and Matt gets him, and Matt kind of has he could smell the blood a little bit like this.
Yeah, I was excited. I wanted it. That was the one match I wanted.
And you got it. And you got it in dominating fashion. And I think that just shows a little bit about your work ethic. Because you could easily say, hey, I'm 0-2 against this guy. I'm already top 4 in the state. I could take my foot off the gas a little bit. But the way that you put your foot on the gas kind of opened up the story for your next year in a sense where you're not satisfied and you're not done. And something I'll say about Matt, and I don't know if we mentioned this earlier, but we kind of did when he was always hanging out with the older kids. But Matt wasn't the type of guy that would grab a kid that he knew he could dominate in practice. right? Matt would grab the Jader Ferrero who would put it
Yeah.
up a little bit. He would grab the Aaron Walk at the time who would, because Matt's junior year, I believe he wrestled Aaron in the duel.
Yeah, Aaron beat me 4-0 in a duel that year, the year he won state.
Yeah,
So,
I think that was my fault
and
too.
you put up that match. You were like, you want to wrestle, Matt? I'm like, hell yeah, I want to wrestle him. I never wanted to, I didn't care about
Because
losing.
me as a
I just
coach,
want to
like
get
I
better.
want to beat Iona, of course, because we've talked about it before. Coach Chabellis and I have talked about it. When the Greeley season happens, I'm Greeley first, Empire second. After the Greeley season, I'm Empire first for the other 9 months of the year. But that doesn't mean that me and Matt don't have this close relationship. So I wasn't about to bamboozle him and say, hey, and throw Aaron up at him and not, bring anything up to him. But I wanted both of them to get a match where they would be competitive. Because if they
Yeah.
wrestle each other, they both are going to pin their kid in the first period. Who's that going to help? It's not
Yeah,
gonna
no
help.
one. It doesn't help anyone, yeah.
But Matt never, to me at least, was scared of competition. And I'm going to bring up a story up right now, jumping into your senior year. We won't get to the state tournament just yet, but at Eastern States, Matt had a really good tournament, took third, I believe, right, Matt?
Yeah, I did all right there.
But pretty much killed everybody except for a club member, Carson LeCastre, who I think Matt could beat, but they both were very good and they knew each other really well. Yeah, so I mean, it's going to be a tough match. You guys wrestled all summer together, all fall together, all that stuff. You took third. But me and Matt are sitting in the stands, and I already told Sebastian this, so it's not like because I told him it was my fault. But we're sitting in the stands, and I'm watching Sebastian. I'm like, he's tough, but I'm like, I think Matt might be able to beat him. I'm like, Matt, why don't you go up to 220 at counties? Now, think about this, Coach DeBellis.
I remember this. I remember. I wasn't there, but I
And
remember.
I have no, and now Sebastian's an Empire guy, and I really like the kid. He's a nice kid.
I love Sebastian. Great.
Right, he's a very
crazy
good
hard
kid.
worker.
And I'm sure he was a good kid then, but he's at a different club, and no disrespect to the club, but I don't know him. So I'm watching him get to the finals. I'm like, you know what? Again, chase competition. There's no reason not to, because if Matt's stay at 195, he pins his way through the tournament. How's he gonna get better? And Sebastian probably pins his way through 220. How's he gonna get better? It's not gonna help.
Yeah, we both get better.
So I was like, I think I said, Matt, go up to 220 for counties. Yeah. And John was sitting next to us, and you said to John, like, hey, do you think that's a good idea? And I was like, yeah, why not? Not only does that, and I'm sorry for the little kids that are listening to this if they do, but for better words, lack of balls. Like, his balls were there. He was like, I'm going up. I don't care. No thoughts. So that one just showed how tough you were. Then you dominate your way to the finals, and you tech fall this man in the finals who took second in the Eastern State tournament at a weight above you. How did that make you feel? And what was your thought process going after that kid for that match?
I was really excited after because, everyone knows Sebastian's such a tough, strong kid. So, that's a tough matchup for me, just dealing with, sheer size and strength. And, it wasn't easy. I had to really use my technique on top and able to get around him. But, he's a great wrestler, like as you could see him doing this year. So I was really happy with that.
You look great that day. You looked really good.
Yeah.
And now that Sebastian's a club guy, I don't know if he's just getting better or he was always that good. But the kid is.
Yeah, he's looking good. No, he's getting way better at the club.
Yeah, I think I think he's gonna. I mean, knock on wood. You guys can't see, but I just knocked on wood. I hope we have a season because he will. I think he'll walk to a state title this year.
I think so too. Yeah.
He's really clicking on all cylinders. I think he lost in the round of 12 this weekend on Super 32. So I mean that's.
Yeah, he had a good showing though.
I think he could have won those matches. One of the matches he lost. I looked at the box score thing. You know how Flo does that. He didn't give him a takedown. It was 2 reversals. He got the only takedown of the match. So I feel like that was a match he probably could have won. And those are little things that he'll fix, though. But that kid, he's on the trajectory to be really good.
He's the real deal.
So, Coach DeBellis, we're at the state tournament right now. We're used to having a great tournament ourselves. The year before, Aaron won the year before Jacobs in the state finals, and we had 3 all-state wrestlers. This past year, it wasn't it for us, right? We brought the team up there to watch. But we had no competitors in the tournament. But some of them could relate because guys like Matt Kelly, here, and AJ and PJ and Tyler Albus and Quincy were all in the room with us leading up to the state tournament, right? All of them. Yep. And again, that goes back to the point, like, why are we not buying in, team? Buy in. Look at these guys are all here. But, so I think you guys are almost part of our team in a sense because we were rooting for you guys like that at least. And, I think there was a lot of external factors for you, Matt, too, at that state tournament. But I knew you were going to win. And there was a kid from PSAL No disrespect for that kid too, because he seemed like a really nice kid. I talked to him a little bit here and there, and I heard he's a really good kid. But at Journeyman Classic that fall, me and Matt went up there. We went up there with a couple people, AJ, whatever. And Matt had a bad day. He really did.
Yeah,
Really
tough guy.
he won one match. And that was after he took third in the state. You know, he had a bad day. I'm like, geez, Louise, Matt, like, what are you doing? But I remember telling the girls, because they were hyped, they wanted Matt. they're more Empire. But they were like, you know, this kid from Truman beat Matt. Like, he's talking all this crap. And I remember saying to them that Matt will attack him at States. I kept saying that. I'm like, you were wrong. Matt was not himself. Watch what happens at States. And again, no disrespect to that kid. He was a great kid. Seems like a nice kid. Matt won a state title. That was a semifinals match. He beat that kid 17-0, if I remember. And then he won 7-0 in the finals. Matt Kelly went from the fifth grader that was chubby with two men in his bracket at States, in Ute States, and taking second, to a guy that won a weight class 195 pounds. These are pretty much men in high school. And doesn't give up a point the whole tournament. How did that feel? Like, how did that feel going from, you know, you as a kid, you and your dad at Ute States, all this stuff, right? And you're there, and you're in it. And then you went through all those struggles coming through, right? Like, you know, your own personal struggles, us pushing you hard days, hard matches, you know, whatever it may have been. You know, maybe I was too hard on you on a day. John was too hard on you day. You went home, you're like, why am I doing this? All of that stuff, state championship. Like, how was that, like, to wrap it all up? How was that for you?
The only way to describe it was States was like my moment of truth. You know, everything rides on States. And I didn't even know Corona was going to end everything the way it did. So that was my last tournament. I didn't know it yet. I thought I was going to be able to go to Virginia Beach, Flow, something else. But that was it for my senior year. So, you know, I just wanted to cap it off. And a big thing for me was just winning it for my dad, because my dad got me into wrestling. So he would have loved to watch me win it my senior year. And you know, just going through that tournament one match at a time. And then once I saw that I had Anthony in the semis, you know, a lot of kids would probably be scared to wrestle someone they lost to a bad matchup. Yeah, I was just like, let's go. This is just like another day in the office. So I went out there. I just did what I did. And, you know, I took him down, just completely different game plan. I was bigger and stronger, and I was just working way harder than I was before. So I was able to get the results I wanted.
That was fun.
You dominated him on top, right? I mean, you kept on turning him with a leg in. Is that right?
I took him down, and then I just kept hitting the power half to the figure four to like scooping the head, you know, just back and forth.
It was
you were tough on top for sure.
But you know what, Coach? He was tough on top.
College is great.
He was tough on top, Coach, in September. He got a lot better, as he said, but like, I think there was something. I talked about this when Aaron Walk won his state title. There was something in Matt's eyes that I knew he was going to win. You know, there was just like, I felt very confident. And we'll interview Brett Perry eventually, because he's an ex-club guy, even though he's a coach now. And Brett helped Matt out, you know, his senior year there. And I warmed up with AJ. So sorry, AJ, if I was bad luck that year.
Yeah, I was warming up with Brett. Yeah,
he warmed up with Brett, and Brett came up to me after they finished warming up. He goes, "Yo, Matt feels ready." There's Matt.
Yeah, I don't know how to describe that day. It was almost like just like God aligned it for me. You know that you know I'm not too spiritual, but I definitely believe in God, and I definitely believe that like my dad must have had something to do with that day to have that result. So it was just great.
I think so, and if we could get a message from him, I'm sure he would reply that he was incredibly proud of you, from not only for the state title. I think really he would be more proud of you for the things that you did with like my kids and a good person. But I think that was the icing on the cake, because you went through all those struggles with wrestling and you got the job done. And the job is, you know, maybe that's not a good term, because the job is not done, right?
Yeah, it's never done.
The job is done. You will forever be a state champion. That's something me and Coach DeBellis can say. But I can say I coached some, including Matt, which makes me happy. And, you know, I know that you put in all of that work to get to that position, and all the hard work paid off. And sometimes it doesn't, right? But it did. And I think that kind of shows like, hey, if I put my nose down, a lot of things are possible. Whether it's winning a state title, whether it's getting the job I want, whether it's raising the family I want, whether it's getting the grades I want. You know, if I work hard enough, I could do this. It's really up to me. And I think you put out there and you prove that. You know, I've been very happy for kids winning state titles, but there was a little something different, I think, because of your journey when you got it done. You know, and
Yeah, it was a crazy journey for me, definitely.
it's crazy. I could picture you as a little kid and seeing you as a grown man, like winning that is even for me, it's a little weird. You know, it's like, what the heck? Like, you know, I remember him as a little guy. And now that I'm getting older, Coach Chabelis, tell me if this happened to you before, but when I'm getting older, I'm seeing these guys, like even Adam being like a chubby little guy to college wrestling tough guy now, and Matt and all these guys. It's like, you know, PJ's voice changed. It's like, what is happening right now? Like, you know, I remember him as a little chubby little first grader who was a killer, but I was like, you know, now he's winning Super 32 or making the finals of Super 32 as an eighth grader. It's like, geez Louise, like these kids, it's just weird for me. But so before we finish, Matt, I'll end with two more things, and then we'll wrap it up. But quarantine, you know, you said the coronavirus hit, you know, basically put a stop to everything. But the two people that were still getting workouts in at their own discretion with no John or me involved, so people that are listening, it wasn't like we were putting them through workouts or anything of that nature, was Matt Kelly and Jake Herrera. They were working all
Yeah.
quarantine. And again, I'm not saying I recommended that or I'm saying like go do that and go put yourself at risk. But I do say that it's interesting, totally different journeys. You know, I would say Matt's was harder, but Jacobs wasn't easy as a guy that was below 500 as a freshman in the state finals as a senior. They both weren't your prototypical superstars, right? And they ended up both being superstars, and both are Division I wrestlers now. So I don't think it's any secret of why they were so successful, because now we're on lockdown and those are the only two knuckleheads wrestling. So what do you say about that, maybe, Matt, your relationship with him and how that even happened? Like, what made you two keep competing in wrestling?
I mean, like, I feel like at a certain point you're just like addicted to it, and you need to wrestle. Like, it's not a matter of like, I was scared of COVID and all the dangers of stuff like that, but I needed to wrestle. It's just something I love. It's not like I'm going to practice, I'm dragging myself out of bed. Like, I wake up and I'm excited to wrestle, and I want to wrestle, and I don't want something like the coronavirus to get in my way from doing that. So I just, motivated. I was just motivated to go there with Jacob, and I was really thankful to have a guy like Jacob here, Division I college wrestler, like, it's just, like I said, an opportunity other people don't have, able to wrestle this guy before I go to college and get the experience I need. It was just great to have.
Well, I think that's something good about our club in general, too, because a lot of our college guys come back and they give back. So this summer, for people that are watching this that are not quite Empire members yet, I'm not trying to, like, sell you on it, but if you're a bigger guy, especially, Matt will be back in the room. Jacob will be back in the room.
Oh, sure.
All those guys. Kyle Davis will be back in the room. Another guy that we'll try to interview here. Brett Perry's back in the room. Like, you got, and then you go to the lighter side. Camacho will be back in the room. Gribby will be back in the room. AJ, RJ. These guys will all be back, right? And I don't think you see that in a lot of places, like we see that Empire. But I have one more question, Coach. Whatever you have, jump in there too. But my last question is, you're at Binghamton now, which is, probably our second biggest pipeline program, because we have Malikian over there and we have Schreiber over there and we have you over there. I know with COVID, it's weird and it's different. It's not the same. But how's your transition with maybe dealing with schoolwork and wrestling and dealing with, everything that's going on? How's college going so far for you?
So, the schoolwork's definitely a lot harder, a lot more work, but, that's just an adjustment you have to get used to in college. And, we haven't been wrestling too much, but, I'm hoping to be able to wrestle soon so we could have a season. But, right now my input for college is, just managing your time. I haven't done a lot of wrestling, but, just my time as a college student, just being up there, getting worked on, taking asynchronous classes, all online classes. It's going to be hard for you, and it's a grind, it's a struggle. It's just, part of life.
I think if you keep your mind in the right place and you stay with the right crowd, kind of like you did with you're going to do fine. I think you need, I'm not saying you're not doing this now, but this is just my advice via podcast as we speak. But, you find the people that are doing the right stuff. That's who you hang out with. You will do the right stuff, and you'll be great, and you'll be successful at that level as well. Coach Chabelis, you have any more questions for him before we wrap this sucker up?
No, Matt, but it's been a pleasure to watch you throughout your whole career, and we'll continue to watch you in Binghamton. And I know you're going to be an All-American one day, possibly a national champ, D1, bring Binghamton back to the top. So we're looking forward to watching you all the way along the way.
Thank you, Coach.
So Matt, I'm going to give you last words, but I'll say whatever my piece, and I'll let you have the last words before we wrap this sucker up. But kind of like Coach, to touch on what Coach said, I believe that you'll be an All-American in college and you'll be a national champ. But to me, that again, that's not the most important thing. I think you're going to be a great, eventually a husband and a father and a worker and whatever you decide to do. I think you're going to continue to progress. I think that like we said before, your journey has not been easy, but I think that's going to mold you into the right type of person, right? Like sometimes it's not better. Of course, we don't risk for certain things, but in a way, it might serve you in a way that other people might not be prepared to do what you're prepared to do. I think you're a little bit more mature than most 19-year-olds because of things that you've gone through, and I think that's going to keep showing. We're extremely proud of you. I'm sure your dad is extremely proud of you, and your mom is definitely extremely proud of you, even though you don't let her come to wrestling matches, from what I heard. Bullshit. You should let her come to wrestling matches. Yeah, because she gets like nervous, I guess, and gets him nervous or whatever. But
I get nervous, yeah.
We'll get her some matchup things. You'll get over it, But we're extremely proud of you. It's so weird to think about you as a little chubby fifth grader to you as tat on your chest, big tough guy here, winning state titles, shutting people down. But you've always been a pleasure to coach. You've always been a lot of fun to coach. You're still a pleasure to be around and be in the room. So we're looking forward to your future. Matt, you can wrap this sucker up and then we're done. What do you got?
Yeah, just last thing, just to all the kids out there struggling with wrestling and getting better, just keep working hard. It's your first year, second year, you're a younger guy. Just, don't get discouraged and keep working hard. Me, when I first started, I was terrible. So I just kept through the process. You Greeley guys, I'd recommend joining Empire, doing that, just doing everything you can to get better in the off season. Yeah.
That was awesome, Matt. We appreciate it. I think you did an excellent job. B, you're good. All right, that's episode 38, 39, or 37, or 40. I'm not sure, but we'll see you next time. Matt, hang on. I'm gonna stop recording. But stay on for a second.